My son canceled my $17,000 cataract surgery check for a dinner, the incredible truth uncovered. Mary felt her world darkening. The confirmation of her cataract surgery loomed like an impending storm cloud, defeating her ever-elusive grasp on independence. At 62, she felt a fierce determination to maintain her small house in the quaint suburb of Chicago, long nurtured by her beloved late husband, Tom. The shutters hung precariously against the architectural charm they once lent, serving as a mirror to her own diminishing strength. Nobody could see the tears welling in her eyes through the curtain of her increasingly blurred vision. The weight of uncertainty was crippling. She had been a schoolteacher, providing guidance and structure to her students, all the while feeling an unsettling disarray in her life now that Tom was gone. Alone in this approaching darkness, the $17,000 surgery was more than a financial burden. It represented her last hope of reclaiming some sense of control over her life. Yet, beneath that surface bravado simmered a troubling fear. What if the surgery didn't work? What if she remained adrift, an island slowly sinking into oblivion? This despair clutched at her heart as she faced another stack of bills scattered across the dining table, medical invoices mingling with the remnants of Tom's life-old photographs that felt like an insult to the living she now too often felt estranged from. And as if compelled by fate's cruel humor, her son Jake had become an enigma, a spirited boy grown into a man lost in reckless abandon. Once, over Sunday dinners, there were laughter and dreams shared. Now, their home echoed with unspoken words, leaving only resentment behind. She had relied on Jake to assist her in almost every respect, updating her finances, managing her appointments. But the phone call that serene morning shattered turned her stomach into knots. The check meant to fund her surgery was cancelled. Her heart raced not just with anger but with the realization of betrayal. Why had he diverted those funds to impress an art collective? A sumptuous dinner? In that instant, Mary felt her independence slip away like grains of sand between her fingers, all dignity eroded in the wake of a single careless decision. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. How could you do this, Jake? Her voice trembled, slicing through the warm air of the kitchen, slicing between them. In the fierce confrontation that followed, truths spilled out like a spilled jar of marbles, a cacophony of misunderstandings and long-held bitterness laid bare. Jake's revelation struck like a lightning bolt. His hands, those same hands, were no longer dependable conduits of creativity. They were now marred by a degenerative condition. His anguish shattered her anger, intertwining them with recognition of each other's burdens. The room, once a battleground, breathed in a fragile hope, but the ground felt unstable beneath them. As anger morphed into shared vulnerability, the world outside felt more threatening yet familiar. With tension thick in the air, Mary struggled with the weight of this revelation. As the countdown to surgery twisted time, would she stand tall, or would fear and disappointment crush the chance of understanding? Each day dragged her closer to a decision, a moment yet to arrive, but urgency loomed, and the threads threatening to unravel their connection tightened painfully. Could a fragile bond stand the test of looming uncertainty? Or would they both surrender to the darkness they fought so hard to escape? The clock ticked relentlessly, teasing the uncertain boundaries between hope, fear, and forgiveness. Mary's heart raced, not just from the weight of her unresolved issues but from the newfound knowledge of Jake's struggle. For a fleeting moment, her frustration dissipated, revealing an unexpected layer of empathy. The chaos of their lives, once intertwined with unspoken grievances, now felt more like a shared burden, one they could strive to understand together. Yet, moments of clarity were like flickers of light against an overwhelming darkness. Sitting at the kitchen table, she began to sift through the complexities of her feelings, each sensation as convoluted as the papers strewn before her. She had to act, to reclaim not only her vision but her life. There were choices to be made, and avoidance was no longer an option. Determined to move forward, Mary took stock of her dwindling options. She needed to advocate for herself. With deliberation, she began to draft a letter to the hospital's financial office. The words flowed despite the knot of uncertainty in her stomach. She wasn't merely writing about a surgery, she was outlining a manifesto of her independence. Every sentence crystallized her intent to fight for her well-being. She also knew she would need to directly confront Jake again. Their previous battle opened a floodgate of emotions, and she understood now that healing could not begin until they faced each other honestly. More than anger, she felt a unifying thread of scared vulnerability. She wouldn't let fear, resentment, or pride isolate her further. After finishing the letter, Mary realized that her next logical step was to find a local support group for individuals managing significant transitions. An internet search yielded a promising lead: a community center offering regular meetings where people shared their stories, their struggles, and triumphs. It was time to participate in the world outside her home, a world she had distanced herself from in her grief. As she prepared to attend, a wave of hesitation washed over her. What if she didn't fit in? What if the group was filled with much younger individuals unrelatable to her experiences? Simultaneously, another voice within her, perhaps the one Tom had always nurtured, whispered to explore the possibility of connection. You have so much to offer, it urged. She steered herself toward the meeting, grappling with her trepidation. The community center loomed large but welcoming, exuding a warmth that contradicted her anxiety. She approached the entrance with a shaky determination, fueled by the urgency of self-reclamation. Inside, she was struck by the variety of participants: older adults, her contemporaries, who wore their own battles like badges. A timid smile broke across her face as she realized she was not alone in her fears. They began sharing stories about surgeries, hardships, and the invaluable lesson of finding one's voice amid chaos. As they spoke, she felt her heart open, lightening the pressure of her worries. Slowly and cautiously, she divulged her own struggles. With each word, the fears that previously burdened her receded, if only slightly. In this room of shared stories, she began to visualize not just her past, but possibilities for her future. Perhaps surgery wasn't solely about reclaiming vision, it was a pivotal act with reverberations throughout her life. Leaving the meeting, fueled by newfound strength, Mary considered how she might reach out to Jake again. But first, there were things she must clarify within herself. Did she believe she could evolve from her current fears? Could she extend the same understanding she hoped to receive from Jake? The clock was ticking, and her surgery was looming closer. While she wrestled with these internal dilemmas, the question remained: could she forgive Jake enough to rebuild their connection, or would their strained relationship drive them both further into isolation? As she reached her house, thoughts swirling, another realization struck her. It wasn't just about healing her eyes anymore. It was about mending the fabric of their lives together. Time was of the essence. What secrets of resilience would surface on her journey? The countdown to surgery had begun, but would she find the courage to face more than just her medical challenges? Mary stood in her cramped living room, the air thick with the scent of lingering uncertainty. The clock's ticking seemed to echo in the silence, amplifying her heartbeat with each passing second. Thoughts crowded her mind, a chaotic swirl of doubt and determination as she considered what lay ahead. She had found her voice at the support group, but would it be enough to bridge the chasm between her and Jake? The decision to confront him weighed heavily on her, a tangible knot in her chest. It was time; she could no longer postpone this pivotal moment. She remembered the exchange they'd had, how their words had become weapons, both cutting deeply. The raw honesty that emerged had been both painful and enlightening, and now Mary needed to embrace that vulnerability, to step into the fray with the intention of healing. She reached for her phone, fingers trembling as they hovered over the screen. Should she message him? Call? Each option felt fraught with the possibility of rejection. But this time, she knew she would not allow doubt to dictate her actions. Just as she had drafted her letter to the hospital, assertive, unapologetic, she needed to approach Jake with the same vigor. "Let us meet," Mary typed, her heart racing. "I think we need to talk." After hitting send, she took a deep breath and stepped outside. The fresh air washed over her like a balm, stirring the embers of her resolve. She wandered through her neighborhood, allowing her thoughts to settle. The vibrant colors of autumn painted the trees around her, a stark contrast to the shadows of uncertainty clinging to her life. Mending her relationship with Jake felt like a formidable task, yet she also recognized it as an opportunity for personal growth. If she could navigate this choppy emotional terrain, what else might she uncover about herself? Each challenge she faced from here on out could become a stepping stone, an integral part of her evolution. As the day wore on, the waiting and wondering became daunting. Would Jake respond positively? Would he even agree to meet? But she steeled herself with the reminder that this was not just about awaiting his reaction. It required her to forge ahead, no matter the outcome. She began to jot down notes, turning the ambiguous feelings she had about their relationship into tangible points she could discuss. What did she want to convey? That his dismissal of her needs had left scars that ran deeper than his initial blurting of inconvenient truths. She needed to articulate her feelings without blaming him, to share the ways his actions and their history together had impacted her sense of self. She also wanted to remind him that they both deserved a chance to be heard and to heal. Later that evening, her phone buzzed, shattering her introspection. Jake's response was brief yet hopeful. "I'm free tomorrow afternoon. Let us talk." The anticipation surged within her, accompanied by an undercurrent of fear. She recognized the potential for vulnerability in this meeting where both her heart and pride would be laid bare, but she chose to lean into it. If she were to emerge from this storm with clarity, she needed to be open with Jake, even if it meant exposing her wounds. Perhaps he was navigating his own conflicting emotions, much like she was. Would they be able to connect beyond their anger and pain? As the sun set behind the horizon, shadows danced along her walls, a reflection of her inner turmoil. She knew the stakes were high. Confronting these feelings could either lead to restoration or the final closure of a chapter long fraught with tension. Before bed, she stared at herself in the mirror, no longer just a woman waiting for surgery, but a person ready to reclaim her story. In that moment, she acknowledged how complex this journey would be, not just in reconstructing her sight but in reconciling her past with the present. Would she find the strength to forgive not only Jake but also herself? As sleep approached, that question loomed large, poised to unleash a torrent of emotion at tomorrow's meeting. The confrontation would be the turning point she had desperately sought. How would they navigate the depths of their shared pain? Would she step into the light of healing or find herself further mired in darkness? Mary woke the next morning entangled in a web of anticipation and anxiety. The morning light spilled into her small living room, illuminating the clutter she'd ignored for weeks. Today would not be just another day, it was a crossroads. With a renewed sense of purpose, she forced herself to embrace the silence, her mind racing with possible dialogues, her heart a drum of uncertainty. As she prepared for her meeting with Jake, her mind retraced the history of their relationship. They had started as two young souls brimming with dreams, laughing at shared jokes, and planning futures they thought were impenetrable. But over time, walls had built up, resentment had festered, and their laughter faded into powerful silences that echoed through their days. Today, though, she needed to enter that space armed with understanding about herself and him. Mary dressed carefully, choosing a simple outfit aimed at promoting comfort rather than showcasing vulnerability. She wanted to be approachable yet strong, conveying a message that she was done hiding. Each article of clothing represented her resolve. The fitted shirt symbolized her emerging confidence, while the relaxed jeans whispered that she was comfortable in her own skin. Returning to the mirror, she caught herself scrutinizing the woman staring back, searching for any lingering doubt buried deep within. Confidence radiated from her, but a flicker of fear danced at the periphery. What if Jake's response wasn't what she hoped for? Would all this effort culminate in another setback? She shook her head, brushing the thoughts away like cobwebs. Just as she had advocated for herself at the support group, she realized she was not going into this meeting for a perfect outcome. She was going in for clarity, for honesty, and for the possibility of healing. With time slipping away, she took a moment to breathe deeply, centering herself. Each inhale felt like a surge of resolve, each exhale released the tension twisting in her abdomen. It was a practice she had learned in therapy, finding balance before stepping into the unknown. As she headed out the door, the autumn air felt crisp against her skin, invigorating her senses. It reminded her that change was in the air. The rustling leaves whispered potential, a reminder that transformation often occurred without warning. She arrived at the cafe, a site that held both fond memories and painful truths. Although the familiar sign evoked nostalgia, it also bore the weight of their shared past, the consistent tension and misunderstandings that had unraveled their connection. As she entered, she scanned the room, searching for Jake's face amid the soothing murmur of conversation. When she spotted him at a corner table, a blend of emotions rushed over her. He looked nervous, just as she felt. Their eyes met briefly, but the moment was interrupted as Mary approached the table. She recognized the tension that encapsulated them both but chose to embrace it rather than shrink away. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. "Of course," Jake replied, his gaze steady yet uncertain. She noticed the flicker of hesitation in his expression, mirroring her own vulnerability. He beckoned for her to sit. As she settled into the chair across from him, the air thickened with unspoken words. She could feel the gravity of this moment. This was not just about their past, it was about forging a new path, the opportunity for healing and mutual respect. Drawing in a deep breath, Mary began to share her feelings, her hurt, her needs, and the emotional toll their misunderstandings had taken. She didn't frame her words with blame but rather as an invitation for connection. "I want to be clear about what I've been feeling," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I want us to move beyond the anger." Jake looked at her intently, his expression shifting. This was the moment of truth. Would he meet her halfway, or would they remain locked in their history of hurt? As he opened his mouth to speak, Mary could feel the hangover of doubt creeping back in. Would he understand? Would he be willing to reconcile? She braced herself for his response, a mixture of hope and apprehension swirling within her. She had taken the step into vulnerability, now it was time to see if he would follow. Would they find a way forward together, or were the wounds too deep to heal? The very question hung in the air, weighing heavier than the latte cups before them. Would this encounter ultimately redefine their relationship, or would it expose fissures that only continued to deepen? Jake paused, drawing in a deep breath that seemed to stretch across the table like an invisible tether between them. His expression shifted, uncertain yet contemplative. Mary's heart raced as she anticipated his response, the words simmering just below the surface, poised to either heal or further divide them. "I've been thinking about everything you said," Jake finally began, his voice steady but laced with tension. "But I'm not sure how to move past it. It feels complicated." His admission struck a chord deep within her. Complication, such a mundane word to encapsulate all the layers of hurt, disappointment, and longing they had navigated together, yet it echoed with painful familiarity. She had anticipated resistance, but now faced with this ambiguity, she realized just how entangled their emotions had become. Mary tucked a stray hair behind her ear, her fingers trembling slightly. "I know it's complicated," she responded quietly, searching his gaze for a glimmer of sincerity. "But if we want something different, we need to confront that complication together. I don't want to keep playing a part in this unending cycle." He blinked slowly, absorbing her words. "What if I can't change, Mary? What if we just keep hurting each other?" His vulnerability cut through the emotional fog, revealing a man clawing at his own uncertainties as fiercely as she was. "I don't have all the answers," she admitted. "But I'm willing to try, even if it's messy. We've been dancing around our fears for so long. I want to start fresh, one step at a time." The weight of her declaration hung in the air, amplifying the tension in the cafe around them. She felt exposed, verbalizing the hope that nestled in her heart, the desire not just for their past but for a future, however uncertain. The challenge now lay in the broken pieces they needed to navigate. Jake looked down at the table, a shadow passing over his expression. "What if we just get to the end and find out we're not compatible anymore? What if reconciliation leads to more hurt?" Her resolve stiffened. This was where real transformation could begin, by confronting their shared fears head-on rather than retreating. "Then we face it together, don't we? If it means coming to a conclusion, then we owe it to ourselves to be brave. If we try, we might uncover strengths within ourselves we didn't even know existed." As she spoke, a flicker of something sparked in Jake's eyes, perhaps disbelief mixed with intrigue. It was a tentative opening, more than she had hoped for just moments ago. Yet, the weight of doubt still hovered like a storm cloud, threatening to obscure any clarity they might grasp. Trying means risking more pain, Mary, he murmured, almost lost in thought. And it also means the opportunity for healing, she countered, tapping into the bravado she had unearthed that morning. You taught me that. Remember the way we used to get through everything together? We could honor that. Yes, it might hurt, but isn't it worth finding out if we can rediscover the laughter? Jake's expression softened at the memories invoked. I remember the laughter, he said softly, a hint of nostalgia illuminating his features. The fire of hope flickered anew within Mary, urging her to press forward. They faced a pivotal moment, each word woven into the tapestry of their shared history and narrative still in formation, demanding courage and honesty. Just as she was about to lean in further, excited to explore those fragments of joy that once defined them, a sharp interruption shattered the moment. The cafe door swung open wide, a sudden influx of customers spilling in and drowning out their conversation. The familiar chime of the entrance bell rang like an alarm in Mary's ears. She felt the pang of disruption wash over her, pulling her back to reality with an uncomfortable jolt. The warmth in the air dissipated, leaving behind an electric current of uncertainty. Would the surge of energy engulf them, or would they find a way to hold on to the thread of connection they had just begun to weave? Mary looked at Jake, their eyes locking for a heartbeat before she sensed her own pulse quicken in the face of this unexpected chaos. How could she anchor both of them amidst the distractions surrounding them? And in that very moment, she knew one thing: they had crossed the threshold into a new phase of their relationship. The question now was not only whether they could return to laughter but how they would confront the noise of the outside world to protect the tentative bond they had begun to form. Would she have the strength to continue facing the complexities ahead? Would Jake take the leap of faith into vulnerability beside her? The cafe bustled around them, yet time had seemingly stood still, each second a test of what they might discover together in the wake of their fears. Mary's grip on the table tightened as the noise of the cafe swelled around her. The distraction was palpable, but it was also a gift, a momentary reprieve from the raw exchange they had been navigating. She could sense that Jake's silence was not merely filled with doubt but also with consideration. Perhaps she had hit a nerve, one that could lead them closer to a resolution or further into chaos. What if we need to establish clearer boundaries? Jake's voice cut through the din when she thought he might remain silent. The concept felt sharper now, almost like a challenge. I've hurt you, and I'm afraid of doing it again. What if we set some rules for ourselves? Mary's mind raced at the suggestion. Boundaries could serve as both a protection and a limitation. That makes sense, she replied cautiously, still processing his words. But what kind of boundaries are we talking about? Are we taking things slow? Avoiding certain topics? Or something more fundamental? Her breath hitched slightly at the thought of limits encroaching on their potential rebirth. Jake looked pained, as if wrestling with his own definitions. Maybe we need to agree on honesty first. No hiding or sugarcoating. I think we both know how easily that spirals into misunderstandings. The notion hung heavily between them, demanding acknowledgement. Mary nodded, her determination building. Honesty was the bedrock of progress. They had both avoided raw truth in the past, but it was time to confront the unvarnished reality of their feelings. How do we practice that? I mean, what does honesty really look like? She questioned, the sincerity of her curiosity laying bare the vulnerability in her heart. It means I can tell you when I'm feeling overwhelmed, and you won't take it as rejection. He took a breath, the air between them thickening with each word spoken. And you can say, Jake, I need more from you, without fear of pushing me away or scaring me off. It's about peeling back the layers of perception. The imagery struck a chord within her. Peeling back layers implied discovery, unveiling truths they had been too defensive to face. She felt an echo of fear, yet it was woven with hope. Let us not only talk about honesty, but also how we communicate. Sometimes it feels like I'm speaking a different language. Maybe we both need to learn each other's dialects. Exactly. His expression shifted from uncertainty to a semblance of realization. What if we start with small things? Like our preferences, our pet peeves, the little annoyances that we've let build up inside us. Like how you never put the cap back on the toothpaste. She offered, attempting to lighten the serious atmosphere. It worked. A small smirk curved Jake's lips, a brief flicker of their earlier camaraderie. Exactly that. He eased into the semblance of comfort. Or the way you keep 1,000,000 books on the coffee table, when I prefer everything streamlined. As they exchanged light-hearted grievances, something shifted. The tension around them lessened, the barriers forming a fragile bridge of common ground. Mary felt a rush of gratitude for Jake's willingness to engage in this new dance, one steeped in honesty rather than habit. But alongside the easing tension emerged an undercurrent of anxiety. They were venturing into uncharted territory, each honest word drawing them closer while simultaneously exposing the jagged edges of their past. What lay beneath this playful exchange was still a minefield of unresolved emotions. The door swung open again, a gust of chilly air sweeping through the cafe and jolting her from her thoughts. A gust of laughter erupted from the newcomers, reminding her of the vibrant connections she sought to uncover with Jake. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her eyes flicking to the crowd. "What if we meet new friends through this process? Broaden our experiences?" Jake's brow furrowed momentarily, reflecting a clash of excitement and trepidation. Meeting new people might complicate things, don't you think? They could stir up feelings or opinions that we're not ready to confront. The words clung to Mary. But what if this is part of the evolution we need? New perspectives could offer us reflections of who we truly are and what we want. Our growth doesn't have to hinge just on each other. That struck a chord within Jake. Maybe, he conceded, the weight of their conversation shifting yet again. But it also means we need to work out our main connection before involving others. If we're not solid, how can we navigate the external noise? She could feel the stakes rising, shimmering like a high wire between them. They stood at a crossroads where personal and relational growth intertwined, demanding both bravery and humility to traverse. Mary's heart raced. There would be decisions to make, risks to take, and yet the vision of a richer, more profound connection began to unfold before her. It was untested terrain, but the prospect of a refined bond felt electric. But as they continued to dance through aspirations, doubt lurked. What if this expansion into new territory fractured their fragile beginnings? Just as the cafe buzzed around them, she could feel the ground shifting underfoot. Would they remain aligned, or would they drift into divergence amidst the chaos? Their next conversation threatened to shift everything yet again, the questions looming like a gathering storm. Mary wondered, were they truly ready to explore those depths together, and how far could they go beyond their comfort zone? Mary's heart thudded in her chest, a rhythmic echo of the unresolved questions swirling in her mind. She grasped her coffee cup like a life raft as she considered the real implications of her words, the concept of including outsiders in their fragile journey. Her mother's voice echoed from long ago, "Sometimes, the shadows are cast by the light we're not willing to embrace." External influences could easily muddy our waters, though, Jake pointed out, his expression turning serious again. "Are you sure this is what you want?" His sober tone momentarily derailed her thoughts. She'd been feeling bold, but now doubt seeped into her resolve. Was she ready to tackle new friendships and perspectives when the foundation of her current relationship felt so wobbly? "Maybe I'm just trying to distract myself from what's ahead," she admitted, almost sheepishly. The dynamic felt shifted now, a switch from playful banter to a more profound reflection. What if we falter? What if this approach only highlights what we haven't fixed? Jake leaned back, a stony expression settling on his face as he considered her words. It's natural to gravitate toward comforting distractions. But if we succeed in growing together, wouldn't that be worth the risk? What I'm saying is we need to confront our fears instead of sidestepping them. Mary's mind wrestled with his suggestion. There was undeniable logic in his words, yet they sat uncomfortably alongside her anxiety. The notion of disappointment loomed large. What if opening up their lives only invited more chaos? "I have to admit," she said, her voice softening, the idea of facing everything together is both thrilling and terrifying. Breathe, Jake said, offering her an anchoring gaze that met the tempest in her heart. Facing it together is the key. We need to create a space where we can both be honest and not just shine the light on each other's flaws, but also reflect on our own. That's where real growth happens. She felt a spark of determination ignite within her. Could this truly be the catalyst they needed? The concept of introspection struck a chord. She had spent so much time analyzing their dynamics, but what if she ventured deeper into her own psyche? I guess we should not only build bridges with each other but also observe our own islands, she said, finding a rhythm with his thoughts. Let us acknowledge what we bring to this relationship, the positives, the negatives, everything in between. I know I carry baggage from past relationships that influences how I perceive you and us. Same here, he admitted, the vulnerability of his statement drawing her focus. I realize I sometimes default to safe modes. But stepping out of my comfort zone sparks growth. It's the very space where connections flourish. We can't let fear dictate our next steps. Mary felt the infectious spirit stirring their conversation, energizing her resolve. Wasn't this the moment to confront the shadows lurking just beneath the surface? Baggage wasn't destined to define them, it could become the impetus for transformation. And maybe acknowledging our own faults along with building connections will only strengthen each other's capacities to heal, she added, feeling the gears shift in her mind. Jake nodded, a hint of hope glimmering in his gaze. Let us not only promise to each other, let us commit to ourselves in this. What do we need to learn about ourselves to make this work? And then, how can we support each other in that journey? Her gaze fell to the table momentarily, a tingle of realization sweeping over her. This newfound perspective was not just about building boundaries and connecting with others, it was about diving into the depths of their cores. Just as the cafe brimmed with life, she felt her own energy rekindled, a growing tension mixed with excitement at how far they had come, even in a single conversation. But the vastness of the journey ahead loomed significantly larger than the distance they had already traversed. Would she be capable of confronting the ghosts of her past? Then, as if a light had flickered on within her, she thought, what if her next leap into the unknown was accepting and revealing the vulnerabilities she had held so tightly? Let us set a date, she declared, her voice gaining strength. To talk about ourselves, our pasts, and what we need from each other going forward. A spirited confrontation with our truths. Jake's lips curled into a smile. It felt like the first shimmering hint of a true breakthrough. But uncertainty lingered at the edges of her consciousness as she considered what they might uncover. Would revealing these truths create a stronger bond, or would it rupture their already fragile connection? As they settled into the final minutes of their conversation, an uneasy anticipation filled the air, hinting at revelations waiting just beneath the surface. Would this be the moment of clarity that changed everything, or would it send them spiraling? Mary exhaled, her heart thumping with renewed purpose. She was ready to face whatever came next, but the gnawing question lingered, were they truly prepared to unravel the depths of what bound them together? The following days unfolded with a sense of urgency and anticipation that Mary could hardly shake. As she sat in her small, sun-soaked apartment, the reality of her decision hung like a pendulum over her, a looming confrontation with her past. Jake had inspired her, igniting a curiosity about the hidden facets of herself that she had long neglected. The thought of nurturing a deeper connection felt invigorating, yet the prospect of peeling back layers of her history left her heartsick. She knew that her past shaped her perceptions and actions, but how much darkness lurked within those shadows? Over the next week, she started to document her reflections in a journal, struggling to address painful memories that had become entangled with her current reality. Her pen hesitated over the page, recalling moments she'd chosen to bury. Each word released burdens she'd carried, revealing not just failures but strengths obscured by years of doubt. With each entry, she confronted pieces of herself she had fought so hard to ignore, times when she felt powerless but ultimately survived. She realized she had developed a habit of avoiding vulnerability, associating it solely with weakness. Yet, in reflecting on her past, she discovered resilience lurking beneath those memories, waiting to be acknowledged. What if, instead of being shackled by her history, she could transform it into a source of empowerment? By the time Saturday approached, her heartbeat quickened, tangled in excitement and fear. She had set a timeline for their discussion, mapping out what moments mattered most. As she prepared for the evening, she felt a surge of determination. There was power in transparency, and though she feared Jake's judgment, she understood that revealing herself meant inviting authenticity into their relationship. In the stillness of her apartment, she felt the walls reverberate with unspoken truths yearning for release. Each time the clock chimed, she struggled against the impulse to push aside her nerves. She couldn't allow doubt to snuff out her resolve. When Jake arrived, the evening unfolded with an intensity she hadn't predicted. Sitting across from him at their chosen spot, a quaint, candlelit corner of a local restaurant, Mary could feel the weight of their shared journey bearing down on her. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice slightly trembling as she poured herself a glass of water. "I know we're here to share things about our pasts, but can I start by asking, are you intimidated by what we're about to reveal?" Jake leaned forward, his expression encouraging. "Not intimidated. Curious. It's about trust, isn't it? The more we share, the more we can understand each other. I want to hear what you've discovered." She wanted to believe his words. Yet the flickering flame of fear was relentless. What if these revelations change how we see each other? What if honesty leads us to a place we didn't expect? "Maybe," he replied thoughtfully, "but isn't that the point? Growth never comes from comfort. If we want something real, we have to face the messy parts too." An ache of vulnerability swelled in her chest. She had already come to realize that being whole included embracing her flaws. "All right, I'll go first." With a deep breath, Mary began recounting experiences she kept hidden. The weight of abandonment from old relationships, the persistent fear of not being enough, all the moments that had left her guarded, stitching a heavy fabric of mistrust around her heart. The relief at airing her truths was palpable, yet her voice cracked as she reached the more painful recollections where she felt abandoned by love. As she spoke, she returned to the comforting presence of Jake's gaze, urging her to dive deeper. Each sentence stirred emotions she had long buried, some buoyant, others suffocating. When she paused, breathless, Jake took her hands in his, overwhelming her with a sense of connection she had feared wouldn't bloom. She observed the empathy in his eyes, daring her to push further. "Your turn," she prompted softly, feeling the energy of their shared vulnerability. But just then, his gaze grew distant, shifting in an alarming manner. Mary's heart raced as the revelation solidified into something tangible. "Mary," he began, the weight of hesitation palpable in the air. "I need to tell you something that might change how you feel about me." The tension thickened like fog draping the city, and Mary held her breath for what lay ahead, her heart pounding with gripping anxiety. What truth would unravel next? Would they emerge stronger from this moment, or would the raw honesty draw them apart? Mary's stomach twisted as she braced herself for Jake's next words. The restaurant's ambient noise faded into silence, and her heart drummed a rapid rhythm that drowned out every clink of silverware and murmur of conversation. She could see Jake's lips forming the beginning of a revelation, and her imagination ran rampant with possibilities. Would he confess to a past mistake? Admit a flaw that could tarnish everything they were building together? "Mary," he began again, his voice steady yet laced with an underlying tension. I have a son." The admission hung in the air, heavy, suffocating. Mary blinked, processing the information. A son? She felt a tumult of emotions surge within her, the helplessness of uncertainty mixed with an unsettling pang of betrayal. How had he kept such an enormous part of himself from her? "You have a son?" The question slipped out before she could filter it. Jake nodded, his gaze fixed on the table between them. "I didn't know how to tell you. He's 17, and I haven't been part of his life in the way I should have been." The implications of his words loomed large. There was the undeniable reality that her blossoming connection with Jake had just become more complex. Would she fit into a life that now included a teenager? Could she love someone who had made choices that led him down a path of disconnection? She wrestled with the swirl of emotions, the burst of sympathy for Jake, tangled with her own sense of vulnerability. "What happened?" she managed, her voice quieter now, tinged with intrigue and concern. He lives with his mother, and there are complications, hard feelings, misunderstandings. I thought I was doing what was best for him, but I've been grappling with regret since. Every word dripped with the weight of his internal struggle, resonating with her own fight for healing. Mary could see the raw honesty in his expression, the flicker of vulnerability that mirrored her own. Still, doubt hovered in her mind. Why tell me all this now? Because, he replied, leaning forward, I want to be honest with you. If we are to build something genuine together, you need to know all of me, even the messy bits. The resolve in his voice sparked something deep within her. If she could conquer her fears of exposure, he could confront his past choices. They were stepping into a territory fraught with uncertainties, but perhaps together they could reframe their histories not as burdens but as blueprints for growth. Thank you for sharing that with me, she said softly, her voice steadier now. It can't be easy. He shifted slightly, offering a strained smile that spoke of relief. Yet, beyond the momentary ease in his expression lay the reality they both faced. She was now met with the decision of whether she could embrace not just Jake but also the complications that accompanied him. As the evening progressed, conversations turned lighter. They touched on hopes, dreams, and plans for the future. But in the shadows of laughter lingered the weight of Jake's admission, clouding the atmosphere with an unshakable tension. Mary realized they had only begun mapping the terrain of their relationship. She had bared her vulnerabilities, yet his revelation compelled her to confront her own fears around commitment and acceptance. With every glance exchanged, each word spoken, Mary felt an internal conflict brewing. Could she handle the complexities of Jake's life? Would becoming part of his world mean navigating a cranky ex and a son who might not take kindly to her presence? Her pulse quickened as she recalled her journal entries, her acknowledgement of resilience. Was this another test of that strength? Mary looked at Jake, who was now studying her with an intensity that pierced right through her. I'm not the only one with layers to peel back, am I? He asked, a teasing glimmer in his eyes, but they both knew the stakes were higher than playful banter. A decision crystallized in her mind. To grow together, they needed to unveil their intricacies, embrace past decisions, and face the hurdles they created. What if, she began cautiously, we take it one step at a time? Together? There's so much we need to sort out. Jake's nod was firm, the resolve in his expression reassuring. That sounds like a plan. With an unspoken understanding and something yet unformed between them, they left the restaurant, the air heavy with anticipation for what lay ahead. The question loomed large: could they truly untangle the web of their pasts to create a future together? As they stepped out onto the bustling street, a thought struck Mary with the force of a revelation. Could her past also include acceptance not merely of Jake's life, but of her own ability to grow, adapt, and embrace the unknown? The path forward felt daunting, yet within her lurked a quiet strength rising to the surface. As they walked side by side, a new question began to surface: what hidden dimensions of their lives awaited discovery, and could these unravel the very foundation of their evolving relationship? Mary stood in the early morning light, her heart racing in a rhythm that mirrored the soft ticking of the mantel clock. The weight of her recent conversations with Jake lingered like an unexpected warmth, urging her to confront the very things she'd kept buried. Their time together had exposed not only wounds but scars too, anchored in their shared histories and the tremors of vulnerability that now pulsed between them. It was a reckoning. She reflected on the dialogues about honesty and boundaries that had brought the skeletons of their pasts into the light. Today, she had the surgery that had loomed on her horizon for so long, a pivotal moment that symbolized more than just a physical restoration of her sight. As she prepared to leave for the hospital, a wave of resilience surged within her. The decision to share her fears, griefs, and regrets had not diluted her identity. Instead, it had fortified her sense of self. She was no longer just Mary, the woman tangled in the shadows of her late husband's memory. She was Mary, a survivor. The air was crisp as she stepped onto her porch, each breath imbued with the sense of blooming flowers that surrounded her house, a house she resolved to truly reclaim as her own. The shutters, which had hung lifeless like her former state, now seemed to echo with an emerging vibrancy that coalesced with her determination to embrace life unabashedly. At the hospital, Mary navigated the sterile environment with a sense of clarity. She felt empowered as she spoke with the staff, articulating exactly what she needed. Each communication became an act of self-advocacy rather than submission. When the nurse prepared her for the procedure, Mary reflected on the numerous people in her support group who had become pillars of strength. Conversations filled with candid vulnerabilities had helped construct this newfound strength that she had leveraged to face the world. She had built a network that had unveiled not just hopes and dreams but had also imparted tools for facing life's uncertainties. As the surgeon entered, Mary felt a sense of not just readiness but excitement, a departure from trepidation. After years of navigating the fog of grief and uncertainty, she could finally see the dimensions of her reality with newfound clarity. With precision in her voice, she shared her concerns, articulating not just her desire for physical restoration but expressing her goal of regaining her independence. She had harnessed the power of her narratives, shaping them into proclamations of her worthiness. The operation unfolded seamlessly, and when Mary emerged from the haze of anesthesia, the bright light that spilled in felt like a second chance. The world around her was vibrant, colors sharper and breaths deeper. For the first time in years, she welcomed the sight of life unfolding free from persistent blur. Days passed, and recovery became a canvas for new beginnings. With each passing moment, Mary felt her shrouded fears dissipate like morning mist yielding to sunlight. She began reconnecting the strings with Jake. Their conversations expanded outward from their shared pasts into discussions about their futures. They waded through complex feelings and tangled histories, but now, instead of veering into despair, vulnerability became a bridge between them. Jake had opened up about his son, offering her glimpses into a life painted with complexity, yet painted with the vibrancy of hope. The thought of investing in a relationship which included both Jake and his son became a gift she embraced. Instead of denying or fearing her potential role in that family dynamic, she approached it with enthusiasm. With time, Mary and Jake took excursions into parks, bonding over simple moments filled with laughter and light. Each day turned into an opportunity for discovery. Together, they faced what it meant to be a blended family, sharing not just their individual stories, but the hopes of crafting a new, united narrative. Every moment spent with Jake's son, the shared meals, the light-hearted banter felt like stitches mending the fabric of their lives together. It became a collaborative masterpiece woven by three individuals, each contributing expressions of vulnerability and courage. As Mary reflected on her journey, her heart brimmed with pride, not just in her reclaiming her vision and independence but in having a loving relationship built on shared vulnerability and trust. Each step had defined her growth, each challenge became an opportunity to uncover strands of strength. She stood that evening beneath a flourishing tree, twilight wrapping around her like a warm embrace. No longer burdened by her past, Mary saw not only with her new vision but with a newfound sense of self and purpose. She was ready to confront whatever lay ahead, confident in her ability to navigate the complexities of life not as a woman in mourning, but as a vibrant force moving forward. In that moment, Mary knew she had not merely survived, she had conquered. And as she watched the sun dip below the horizon, she marveled at the beauty of the present, the threads of her story woven anew, ready for the next chapter together. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.